I'm a 33-year-old woman, and I find myself here to share something I wish I didn't have to, but I'm feeling a bit embarrassed and definitely can't post this on my main account. So here goes. For over 2 years now, I've been married to my husband, a wonderful man who is 35. And while our marriage has been a source of great joy, the dynamics with his family, particularly his mother, have been a different story. Ever since day one, it's been clear that my mother-in-law plays favorites. It's not something hidden or subtle. It's as obvious as day. My sister-in-law, who seems perfectly fine in her own right, gets spoiled rotten by her, and I mean absolutely spoiled. Gifts keep pouring in her direction, endless streams of compliments, and invitations to events where my presence seemed more like an afterthought, if it was considered at all. Imagine trying to fit into a knitted family quilt, only to find that your patch is left out in the basket. It's not really in my nature to be confrontational about these things. I like to think of myself as someone who keeps her peace. I'm not the type to raise a fuss over not being the center of attention, but you'd think there might be room for just a little balance, right? I used to tell myself it was all right, that keeping my distance was for the best. But deep down, the way she consistently treats me with indifference still hurts. It's like being on the periphery of a family photo, with everyone smiling and you half out of the frame, unnoticed. The times she has acknowledged me have been tinged with a coldness that makes warmth feel like a distant fantasy. It's frustrating because my sister-in-law, due to her pregnancy and all that, has understandably been getting more attention. But with my mother-in-law, it's as if these small moments of maternal pride are reserved solely for her. I've tried to come to terms with it, thinking that maybe that's just how family dynamics can be. Still, every tiny slight is like a drip on stone, slow, unyielding, and eventually marking a groove. Honestly, I don't hate being left alone. With everything going on, sometimes that's all I want. But when it's a constant pattern, repeated over and over, it becomes more challenging to ignore the issue. But here we are, and as much as I prefer not to dwell on negativity, the underlying sting of being overlooked has mounted into a poignant presence in my life. I'm keeping my head above water and trying to move forward, even while this complicated dance with my mother-in-law continues to thrum in the background, unwillingly part of our story since those early days of marriage. In the past few months, my in-laws have been consumed by a whirlwind of drama involving my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law. My mother-in-law, whose focus had primarily been on doting over the sister-in-law, seemed to have shifted her attention to managing this new turmoil. It was like watching a ship rapidly changing its course amidst a brewing storm, and there I was, a spectator once again on the sidelines. The story unfolded like this. My brother-in-law had discovered that his soon-to-be ex-wife, my sister-in-law, was being unfaithful. Her affair had shattered the already shaky foundation of their marriage. When my husband and I initially heard the news, it was almost like a revelation. We were out of the loop until my mother-in-law, in tears, came rushing to us, recounting the entire ordeal in vivid detail. She painted a picture of betrayal and heartache, and amidst her crying, there was a noticeable undercurrent of anger and regret. It was as if she was grappling with the weight of the attention and affection she had showered on my sister-in-law, only to face this unforeseen scandal. The air was thick with her disappointment and disbelief. During that emotional roller coaster, my mother-in-law's narrative was punctuated by harsh criticism directed at my sister-in-law. For the first time, I witnessed a break in her unwavering favoritism. She was shaming my sister-in-law, lamenting the extent of her prior kindnesses, and even speaking about her with an edge of hostility. She was hurt and betrayed, perhaps for having invested so much into this person who, in her eyes, had let her down so profoundly. It was a stark change from the usual narrative of adoration I'd become used to hearing. Despite the turmoil going on, I made a conscious effort to keep my distance emotionally. It was not my battlefield after all. My thoughts were solely focused on my own family, particularly my young son. Yet, the ripple effects of these family dynamics were hard to ignore. The tension was palpable as everyone tried to navigate the choppy waters of distress caused by the affair revelation. Amid the chaos, there came a point of resolution, or at least a temporary one. As things slowly began to settle down and the initial shockwaves began to subside, my brother-in-law made the difficult decision to seek out DNA tests for his 2 children. It was his way of seeking closure, or perhaps certainty, amidst the sea of doubts that had filled his life. It was a delicate situation, and those involved were trying to move forward, albeit cautiously, and figure out how best to support the family. In a way, the whole episode acted like a magnifying glass, highlighting the intricacies of family with all its entanglements and heartaches. Here I was, trying to maneuver through my own feelings of exclusion, and now finding myself amidst a shifting family dynamic that screamed unpredictability at every turn. The storm had slightly calmed, but its echoes lingered within everyone's interactions. There was a temporary truce, as if a fragile web was delicately suspended in the air, waiting to be woven back into a semblance of familial peace. Amidst the ongoing family drama, my personal life was reaching a joyous milestone. I had just given birth to my precious son 2 weeks prior, and for a brief moment, it felt like all was peaceful in my corner of the world. The exhausting yet exhilarating process of becoming a new mother had me completely involved, with my focus fully on my baby. The little moments of bonding, despite their tiring nature, had filled my days with a delightful sense of purpose and happiness. Once I was discharged from the hospital, I was looking forward to introducing the newest member of our family. The house had been prepared to welcome this fresh start. Excitement, albeit laced with a hint of nervousness about the inevitable family interactions, lingered in the air. Only my mom from my side of the family could make it, given the timing and distance constraints, but her presence was a comforting anchor in the days following my return home. When my husband's family came to visit us at home, they brought with them an entourage, my mother-in-law, her 2 sisters, and a niece. It was a full house, bursting with curious eyes, eager to catch a glimpse of the newborn. As they entered, I couldn't help but notice my mother-in-law's calculated gaze fixated on my tiny son, almost as if she was examining him. Despite my attempts at creating a warm atmosphere, there was a subtle tension. They showered him with compliments, but the underlying family dynamics from the past few weeks were hard to ignore. It was as if our new beginning was being subtly overshadowed by the residue of the family's unresolved issues. My mom, always the diligent hostess, took on the task of serving drinks and snacks, allowing me to momentarily step back and focus solely on my child. Despite the hustle and bustle of the house filled with family, everything seemed to have maintained a semblance of stability. While everyone was eager to contribute their thoughts on who the baby appeared to look like, I was just happy to have my family around, introducing my little one to the world. At that moment, my only wish was to keep the newfound peace and joy that my child had brought into our lives untainted by any external tensions. But, just as things were beginning to feel relatively calm and welcoming, my mother-in-law's focus shifted from the introductory pleasantries to something that caught me off guard. The first words she uttered upon seeing the baby were pointed at a very particular curiosity, whether he shared any physical traits with his father. Her eyes seemed to scan my baby's face meticulously, as if trying to compare with some internal image she had of him. I tried not to read too much into it, telling myself it was just a grandmotherly instinct, wanting to see her child reflected in the next generation. But then she asked the others in the room to chime in, almost like she was conducting a family survey on the baby's features. As voices around the room speculated jovially about who my son resembled, the uneasiness settled its familiar cloak back on my shoulders. Despite my best efforts, I felt the warmth of welcoming family quickly drain, replaced by a chill of discomfort. Yet, I maintained a smile for the sake of decorum. This delicate balancing act became the unwelcome focus of my afternoon as I tried to traverse the line between acceptance and frustration. My mom, ever the supportive figure, managed things seamlessly as she helped to clean up and serve refreshments to our guests. She understood the unspoken strain and quietly took over the hostess duties, providing me some respite to regroup. Everything seemed to be under control again until my mother-in-law picked up her coffee cup, took a casual sip, and then looked directly at my husband, catching me by surprise. Her next words landed like a heavy stone in the room, halting all conversations. "Well, when are you taking the DNA test?" The room went silent. Even the usual hum of daytime activity outside seemed to pause. It was as if her words had sucked all the air out of the room. She let the statement hang in the air for an agonizing beat, before following up with a nervous laugh. "Oh, I'm just kidding," she said, putting her hands together, though her expression suggested a mix of nerves and something less benign. The attempted joke made the situation even more awkward. My husband, perhaps trying to diffuse the situation, or at least maintain peace, started laughing in a manner that almost felt forced, nudging me slightly as if encouraging me to play along, but I couldn't find any humor in the situation. If anything, I felt a growing sense of humiliation and anger slowly simmering within. I caught my mom's eyes on me. Her silent support was tangible, filling me with both reassurance and the sad reality that she too sensed the real implication behind my mother-in-law's badly timed jest. Inside me, myriad emotions were swirling. Anger at the implication, embarrassment from the exposure, and a hurt that my joyous occasion had been tainted with the shade of doubt. My mother-in-law, who had played favorites so openly before, had cast a suspicious shadow over this milestone in our lives. It made me wonder, in a moment of vulnerability, if I could ever be truly embraced without reservations by any part of his family. The visit ended without my mother-in-law giving a proper farewell to her grandchild, a detail that felt more symbolic than incidental. By the end of the day, I found it impossible to shake off the emotional pall her words had draped over the memory of welcoming my son home. Once the guests had departed and the house had returned to its more tranquil state, the doubt remained stretched across the corners of my mind, prodding at my happiness like an ugly thorn. The sight of my baby, blissfully unaware of the adult complexities surrounding him, was my solace during those suffocating hours. Still, the discomfort lingered, refusing to be entirely banished by the warmth of family until a singular thought emerged through my reflective respite. How do we move forward from here without letting this dark cloud shadow our glowing new beginning? After the tense gathering had disbanded and the house had lapsed back into a cherished calm, I knew I had to confront the issue. I turned to my husband, seeking clarity in the quiet moments that followed. "Did you hear what your mother said?" I asked him carefully, seeking affirmation of my feelings. He merely shrugged, as if it was a typical ribbing from a familial elder, repeating that she was just joking, with no malice intended. I felt slightly bewildered by his dismissal. But it wasn't just a joke. She implied something about us, about me. I pressed, hoping he would recognize the weight of the words that unsettled the room. "She's still reeling from what happened with my sister," he replied, lending more explanation than justification. "She's not trying to offend you." "I get that everyone's on edge," I started softly, grasping at understanding. But it was uncomfortable. It felt like she questioned us in front of everyone. He wrapped an arm around me, soothing yet somewhat dismissive of the deeper sting I felt. "Honestly, I wouldn't worry about it too much," he reassured. "She says things like that sometimes without thinking. You know it's nothing serious, and it might be best to just let it go." But the phrasing and the delivery lingered with me, leaving threads of doubt knotting themselves against my peace. As I nursed my son that night, the unease mingled with a silent vow to rise above, ensuring my little family shielded itself in assurance and in love, despite the rough exterior. I would need to speak with my mother-in-law eventually, to bridge the understanding silently fractured today. Until then, I tried to let the whispers of insecurity melt away with the bedtime lullabies, praying that the new chapter I envisioned could gently unfold, unmarred by such shaken beginnings.